Hey everyone, welcome to your first lecture for Art 249 Professional Practices 1. The title of this lecture is called Images, Power, and Politics, and it's from a book called Practices of Looking by Marita Sturken and Nancy Cartwright, and published by Oxford Press. Social practices of looking are what we use to experience the world. We're social creatures as people, and looking involves relationships of power. To willfully look at an image or not to look is sometimes a choice. Conscious and unconscious aspects of looking intersect, and we don't always know why we look or how we feel about what we see. This is very common in the arts especially. In so many ways, our world is organized around practices of looking. We live in cultures that are increasingly permeated by visual images and technologies. And think about how much that's changed in your lifetime, how technology has changed radically within the last decade or even 15 years. So for instance, personal photographs can be invested with the power to conjure feelings about someone who's no longer with us, or political images may be invested with the power to incite belief and action. I find that particularly interesting given the fact that we're in a presidential election cycle right now. A single image can serve many purposes, appear in many contexts, and mean different things to different people. The power of images is derived both from the shared meanings they generate across locations and the particular meanings they hold in a given place or culture. So, this image was made by the photographer Ouija, whose real name was Arthur Felig, in 1941, and it's titled The First Murder. It's an image of women and children looking dramatically that draws our attention to practices of looking. This photograph, which does not show us what the women and children see, was taken in the early 1940s by Ouija. He was a self-taught photographer known for his documentation of urban street crime and everyday spectacle. His real name, like I said, was Arthur Felig. He tracked crimes reported to the police, sometimes arriving on the scene before the police showed up. Hence his pen name, a play on the occult board game Ouija, Ouija. In the 21st century, we're so accustomed now to seeing events broadcast live over news sites, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. But in the 1940s, it was very different. So, a woman relative cried, but neighborhood dead-end kids enjoyed the show when a small-time racketeer was shot and killed, wrote Ouija in the caption that accompanied this startling photograph in his 1945 publication, Naked City. On the facing page, the opposite page, Ouija showed the bloody body lying in the street. It's the photograph of the women and children looking, however, and not the gruesome image of the dead racketeer that has become one of the most iconic Ouija photographs. Alternately laughing, staring in disbelief, or looking into the camera to grasp their own momentary chance to be recorded, the children who had witnessed this grisly scene from an unsettling amalgam of human emotion and self-absorption. Two women are among the group. One, whom Ouija mentioned above, stands at the center, her face contorted with anguished tears, her personal loss turned into public spectacle. Why do I think this photograph is relevant to you all, specifically in this class? I think what it has to do with is the fact that Ouija used captions and wrote alongside of his images to add to a level of understanding for his viewers who are picking up daily newspaper periodicals. And I think this is really important for artists to understand, that while an image can convey emotions and content and feelings, as well as specific ideas, it always helps to have an understanding of how to communicate about those images as you present them to a larger audience. So let's fast forward to 2015. There was an iPhone 6 campaign by Apple with its slogan, quote, shot on iPhone 6, unquote. And this was to sell the image quality of the mobile phone cameras, which at that time was just starting to expand into photographers and image makers' lives in a more serious and meaningful way. Very different than today when everyone has access to the iPhone or a camera on their phone. This was parodied by a counter billboard campaign called, quote, also shot on iPhone 6 in San Francisco, California. Reportedly produced by advertising creatives who wanted to make the point that most images taken on iPhones are pretty banal or boring. The anonymous artist pasted next to the official billboards large-scale posters of over-the-top selfies, photographs more like ones often taken by everyday iPhone users like you and me, labeling their parody works shot on an iPhone, and branding them with the Apple logo just like the original ads. The juxtapositions were documented on a Tumblr site that was quickly taken down, presumably because Apple objected on grounds of copyright violation. I think what this shows, hopefully you'll get this, that the notion of authorship is really fluid, especially today as compared to the 1940s when Ouija was working as a newspaper photographer. But what you should also notice is that the content of the image is exactly the same in that it creates a moment for people to notice something completely different about their world. That idea is called representation, and the concept of that has a specific history and meaning in the study of visual culture and art history. Representation refers to the use of language, marks, and images to create meaning about the world around us. The representation systems used in painting, drawing, photography, cinema, television, and digital media also involve rules and conventions. And these rules and conventions, many of you have learned about in art history courses, go back millennia. Throughout history, debates about representation have considered whether representations reflect the world as it is, mirroring it back to us, or whether we construct the world and its meaning through representations that are abstract or imitative of physical form. A picture of a cat may show the color of the cat and its general physical shape, but the word cat, however, bears no physical or visual relationship to the object cat. This understanding, or this process of understanding the meaning of things in context, takes place in part through our use of written, gestural, spoken, or visual representations. In this still life, painted around 1765 by the French painter Henri Horace Roland de la Porte, presents an array of food and drink that's carefully painted to reflect what was probably an actual arrangement of these items. De la Porte attended to each minute detail. Representing the colors and shapes as they appeared to his eye. The scene seems so lifelike that one imagines one could touch the fruit and eat it. Yet, this image simply is a reflection of this particular scene, rendered with the skill of an artist as if he had placed a mirror next to it. This painting by de la Porte is not merely a mirror image, however, of the display. It also symbolizes something, peasant life. It invokes a rustic way of living despite the absence of human figures. We learn the conventions of the systems of representation within a given culture. In this case, with this painting, the culture at that time in 1765 rural France was reflected through the food and tabletop items that you would find in a peasant's home. Another example of this is by the artist Rene Magritte. This notion of representation is heavy on the surrealist mind when he commented on the process of representation in a series of paintings and drawings, famously depicting a picture of a pipe with the line "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," or "This is not a pipe." One could argue, on the one hand, that Magritte is making a joke. Of course, this is not a real, actual pipe. It's an image of a pipe that he had painted. On the other hand, Magritte's painting also points reflexively to the relationship among words, images, and things. This is not a pipe itself, the painting suggests, but rather the representation of a pipe in image and word. In this work, The Two Mysteries, 1966, the famous original 1928 painting is depicted on an easel next to the image of another pipe. Here we have two pipes, or rather, two paintings of pipes, or a painting of a pipe and a painting of a painting of a pipe, with the same text that reminds us, this is not a pipe. Magritte's painting is famous. However, many artists have also referred to and played off of it. The cartoon artist Scott McCloud, in his book Understanding Comics, uses Magritte's treachery of images to explain the concept of representation in the vocabulary of comics. McCloud notes that the reproduction of the painting in his book is a printed copy of a drawing of a painting of a pipe, and follows this with a hilarious series of pictograms of icons such as the American flag, a stop sign, and a smiley face, all drawn with disclaimers attached. This is not America. This is not a law. This is not a face. As McCloud makes clear, we are surrounded by images that play with representation, unmasking our initial assumptions, inviting us to experience layers of meanings beyond the obvious and literal. So, for your first lecture, we've gone over the ideas of representation, power, and imagery. What I'm really curious to have you do as a group of students for your first art journal process book prompt is to watch this lecture, but also watch Art 21, Barbara Kruger, which I put the link up for, as well as read the accompanying essay. And I want you to choose an image from art history. It could be painting, drawing, print, or photograph to represent on a PDF with a written paragraph about the image that follows the patterns on reading assignment number 1, Williams, page 11. And that description is specifically what good art writers do, right? So there's a list of 5 things that good art writers do. And it's a pattern. It's a pattern that people follow when they write about art. So I'll give you an extra 5 points if you also choose an image that is both considered representational and symbolic. And just remember, I'm going to be asking you to keep a journal or process book in this class, which I'll collect online at the end of the semester. I'm going to be giving you specific prompts, but you're welcome to create additional entries to respond to course content, issues in contemporary art, or anything else that you see that comes up. You may type directly into the Canvas, or you can write by hand and upload digital files of your work at the end of the semester. Some entries will require visiting museums, galleries, guest lectures, etc. But this should be a good start for you all to understand sort of the direction of the course and using both words as well as images to describe ideas in art.